The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear, and the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist, but we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees, even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is LON STRICKLER. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, LON STRICKLER, coming to you within a cannon shot of the hallowed fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining me. So, quick note, Arcane Radio and Beyond Explanation channel was made possible by you liking, subscribing, and sharing our programming. Super chat donations are essential for us to continue offering you this unique content. Your consideration is very much needed and appreciated. Now, first, before I bring my guest in tonight, I did post an image and a description on a few social media outlets and today on the blog. This was a photo taken by David Eckhart a while back. And, at the time, I had a sense that this was some type of winged humanoid. And I've had that ever since I saw this thing. So last night, and for those who don't know, myself and a colleague have been involved with contacting what we know to be an ultra-terrestrial. And these contacts confirm that this image was indeed a member of their legion who have appeared at the O'Hare International Airport and locations in the region. Now, my associate and I have recently established contact with what they call themselves the unseen ones, and continue to advise our team in hope that a profound discovery will result in full disclosure. Now, these ultra-terrestrials have been among us much longer than has ever been anticipated. And, if you want to follow up on our investigations on this, just go to famsandmonsters.com or go to cryptohunters.org. And we will keep you updated. Now, after I posted this last night and today, it kind of garnered a lot of response from readers and followers. At this point, I'm kind of hesitant to release further revelations. Now, we have been super busy recording, documenting, and following up the past few weeks. I mean, it has been a whirlwind. And our team will have the final say on what public releases in regards to the Chicago and O'Hare sightings. For those who have been concerned by the ultra-terrestrials' use of the term legion, it's simply a word used by them to describe their collective. No biblical, no spiritual, no so-called demonic connections involved here. And the ultra-terrestrial factions consist of many varieties of beings, including angels. So just please bear with us. I realize that many of those who hear this and hear our presentations may seem to think it's some fantastical of some sort, but for those who have followed me over the years, that I'm not a conspiratorial theorist. I mean, I just don't, I want to make sure when I receive the information, I present it as is. I may comment on it and let you decide for yourself. So, I'm just simply trying to seek the truth and find the truth. So it is what it is. And I appreciate you keeping an open mind on this. So tonight, I welcome to Arcane Radio Greene County, Pennsylvania resident James West. Now, James has had two horrendous cryptid canine encounters near his home when he was in his late teens. Now, this story is a detailed account of actual physical contact with these terrifying cryptids. Very unusual. I was blown away when I first heard about it. So, James, thanks for joining me this evening.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lon.
So let's get right down to it. You tell us about your first encounter, why it started, where were you, and what happened?
Okay, well, a little backstory. 2002 in the summer, I was 16 years old. I used to hunt behind my house all the time. I found claw marks. They looked like a bear's claw, about 7 or 8 foot up a tree. I didn't think a whole lot about it then. Obviously, now I know a little bit better. But my first encounter, I was I couldn't sleep, and I got up. It was about 11:30 at night, snowing like a blizzard outside. But I got all my gear together and went to my place where I hunt coyotes and different. I hunt all kinds of stuff there. I used to hunt squirrel and rabbit and coyote and da 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 da. Anyway, I went out. Like I said, it was snowing. I worked my way down a hill, real steep hill. You go down to a ravine, work your way around the ravine, down across a little stream, up the other side. I walked up a mine road, and they had a big pile of crush and run, which is like the gravel that they used to build roadways with. It was sitting there, and so I put my collar out and put my back up against that pile of crush and run. I sat down Indian style, and then after I sat Indian style, I brought my knees up so I could lay my gun across my knees. So that way, whenever I got a shot at a coyote, the gun would already be aiming where it needed to be. Well, I sat there for a good 45 minutes to an hour, getting cold. It was well below zero, getting really frigid. And I had we used to have a 1 million candle watt spotlight that was battery powered, and it had a red filter on it. Canines don't see red very well. So the hopes are whenever you turn that light on, it gives you a few seconds to get a shot at a coyote or a fox or whatever you're after before it notices the light. Well, when I reached to turn the light on to leave, I turned it on and it locks in place so it stays on. And about 10 feet away from me, down on all fours, was, at first I thought, man, that is the biggest freaking coyote I've ever seen in my life. But that changed real quick whenever as soon as that light hit it had its nose to the ground. As soon as that light hit it, it went poof like this, and it looked right at me. So that tells me that it can see red, which, we know that these are upright canines, but they can't be 100% canines then if they don't have all of the characteristics, right?
Right.
Anyway, I hit it with the light, and it was on all fours. It lifted its head up and looked at me. It took a step backwards and then proceeded to stand itself up and puff its chest out at me. I heard one deep pop in its chest. I know a lot of people say they hear a lot of popping and stuff, but I didn't hear just that one real deep, like you hit a drum. It was that it resonated because it was so quiet out there. Anyway, I didn't really have time to react in fear, it took one step on two legs towards me, and I shot it. I hit it in the upper right part of its chest. The blood misted, made a nice big plume of blood. It took two steps to its left and was gone. So that million candle watt range is about a 12-foot circle of light.
Mm-hmm.
And it was off to my left of the light. So it took two steps and it covered 10 to 12 feet in two steps and was gone. Afterwards, I shot at it two more times as it was running, but it was so fast I knew I didn't hit it, but I had to try, you know. And so here I go. I get up and I start walking in the direction that this thing went, and there's puddles of blood laying there. There's about a pie plate size puddle of blood laying there on the ground. And I took a couple more steps and I went, wait, load your gun, you idiot. You know, I was so, my adrenaline was going so fast at that point. I forgot to reload, you know, and I stopped myself and reloaded the shotgun. And I was using number 2 coyote loads, and which that's pretty hefty, especially 10 feet away. I mean, the whole wad goes through something at that range. It doesn't have a chance to open up.
I mean, that's just one step smaller than buckshot, really.
Right. It's one step smaller than single watt buckshot. So I reloaded and I started following it. I got about 30 feet out and I noticed the blood pools were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Like every few feet, there was less and less blood. Good tracks because of the snow, but the blood was reducing, and that worried me that maybe this thing is healing itself, or, you know, it's now it's wounded and it's a bad spot to be in. It's after midnight. You can't see around you. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face.
Mm-hmm.
Without that light, I was done. So like I said, I followed it about 30 more feet, or 30 feet altogether, and no blood at all. Just some tracks. And the tracks were, you know, if I had to guess, at least 14 inches.
Mm-hmm.
They were big, big tracks, and they had that tapered down effect to the back of their leg. And what I saw had hawks on it. It had hawks just like a dog leg,
mm-hmm.
and they bent backwards. But I worked my way out, and I still hunted the whole way. Would take a couple steps, stop, listen, shine my light around, make sure I wasn't being followed or set up for an ambush. And I did that for 2 miles. I walked 2 miles out of the way. Keep in mind, to get there, I walked about 500 yards,
Mm-hmm.
straight line. But to follow a wide open trail and to work my way back to a main paved road, it was about 2 miles.
That was smart. Wow. So what's the first thing you thought? I mean, well, when you saw this thing, you thought it was a huge coyote, but how did your mind work after that? Did you think you just saw something supernatural or what?
To be honest, it happened so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I still have trouble wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, I bet.
It was just, you know, you don't expect to turn on a light and see a real life werewolf standing in front of you, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said, I already had my gun leveled because I was planning on shooting at something already.
Mm-hmm.
But once it stood up and took a step, that I took that as aggressive, and that's when I shot. I mean, it was probably 2 to 3 seconds max.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. I mean, I fired.
Well, it's probably good you had 2 shot in there instead of a upland game load of maybe 6 or 7, because I mean, you had a little stopping power. Then you got you got its attention.
Right.
So the thing took off and took off well, and fortunately, you never met up with it again. But you kind of believe it was healing itself, which, with all the stories I've heard, especially here in Pennsylvania with these upright canines or even the quadrupeds, there's some pretty weird stuff. I mean, they all, like you said, the description was very dead on what we get. Huge beings, very muscular.
Yeah, if I had to put Arnold Schwarzenegger, but make him about 2 foot taller, and even bigger than he was when he was Mr. Universe. I mean, just chiseled out. It didn't have a whole lot of hair on its front.
Right.
The hair was up here, from what I could see. It had the ears on top of its head like this with the tufts on them. But I mostly noticed hair whenever after I shot and it turned to run. That's when I saw the hair on it, and it had a stumpy little tail. I mean, not maybe 4 inches long.
Wow. Huh. Well, a lot of times when we get these reports, people won't even mention the tail. They don't. They're too busy looking at the mouth and the size of the thing, let alone to look at a tail. So, but a small tail like that is unusual.
Well, it never opened its mouth at me.
Oh, didn't it?
No, it didn't bear this one didn't bear teeth at me at all. It made that aggressive gesture towards me, and that's all I needed.
Wow. That's remarkable. That is really remarkable. Now, does it still affect you to this day? Because I can see it's affecting you as you're talking about it.
Yeah, I still have some issues with it. I like to say I'm heavily medicated for your pleasure. Because I take medication for PTSD, and for bipolar.
Yeah, interesting. Well, and as well as anybody, that Greene County is Greene County, people don't know, is right on the southwest corner of Pennsylvania. That area, then going into into West Virginia and to Ohio, then of course over in Washington County, have had a lot of cryptid activity over the years. And but there was actually a book written about Greene County and the cryptids in Greene County. And when I sent your account over to Stan Gordon, he had told me he had heard about your account before. And that he wasn't really surprised by it, and the accounts that I have heard in Greene County, and you've read mine with the Dark Walk or whatever the hell that thing was. I don't even know what that was yet. That may very well have been an upright canine, but it was different. I mean, that one was killed. I mean, that guy literally killed that thing. So, but
I remember reading about that he shot it.
Yeah. Yeah, because the witness, I mean, the younger boy, he was looking out the side out of the living room out into the driveway, and he saw this thing lay in the back of the pickup. So, interesting. Well, now, of course, that isn't the only sighting you had, the only encounter you had. The Leon was a bit more physical. Why don't you give us an idea and tell us about that one?
Well, my second encounter was the following summer after the first encounter. It was the following summer, 2003. I was 17, and I was walking up our main road that takes you out of town. I was walking up it, and about 50 to 60 feet down the road in front of me, it looked like if you took 3 bull mastiffs and put them on top of each other, just that build, that size. And the head it had the coloration of almost of a Rottweiler with Doberman ears. It didn't have the tufts on its ears like the first one did, but it had the pointed ears. Well, anyway, like I said, 50, 60 feet away, I saw it. It saw me, and it wasn't a few seconds. It ran and was on me. And the only thing I could do, I didn't even think. I just reacted. Was I turned my body to the right and pushed my left arm out. I made a fist and pushed my left arm out as hard as I could. And luckily, when it opened its mouth, my hand went right down its throat.
Mm.
And I pushed for everything I had. I got just past my elbow into its throat. And then I laid over top of it. I grabbed it around the neck with my right arm and fell on top of it. And I, at first, like I told you before, I thought it was just a big dog until it grabbed me by the leg. You know, it grabbed me with an actual hand. And luckily, I was wearing briar guards, real heavy briar guards, because me and a friend, that's where I was walking to, was my friend's house. We had planned on clearing out some multiflora rose bushes and stuff to make a little campground. And luckily, I had those heavy pants on, because I think if I didn't, I would have had some serious wounds. But like I said, I laid on top of it for 2 to 3 minutes. I'm laying in the middle of the road with this thing, you know. I'm waiting for a car to come and just run us both over. And I laid on it, and it went limp. And that's whenever I decided it was time to get up, because I thought I might have suffocated it at that point, because I had held it for 3 minutes, at least 2 to 3 minutes, at least. And I was a lot stronger than I am now back then, and I could feel its bones and stuff shifting under my squeezing it. So I thought maybe I had suffocated it, and I stood up, pulled my arm out of it, shook that god-awful death-smelling mucus off of me. I mean, that's the only thing I can akin it to, is if you've ever been riding down the road at 100 degrees outside and there's a dead bloated deer on the side of the road that ruptured. That's what it smelled like inside. And I mean, it was gagging me. And I'm sitting there scraping this stuff off me like this, you know, just trying to get it off me because it was so putrid. And I turn and look, and this thing's already gagging and getting up on all fours again. And I'm going, oh shit, what am I going to do now? You know? Luckily, it just gave me this look, like it locked eyes with me, and it had the most beautiful amber colored eyes that I've ever seen on any creature. It's like if you held a beer up to the sunlight, how that light cascades through and it gives it that real rich amber color. That's exactly what it looked like, with big black pupils. But it locked eyes with me, and it just gave me this vibe. It didn't mind speak like I've heard some people say they've mind speak with them. It didn't do that, but it kind of just gave me this vibe of like, you bastard, you know, you beat me. And after it gave me that, it ran right past me and ran right back into the woods. And I never saw that again.
Have you ever had any indications of other cryptid canines around your area or since then?
Oh yeah. I still, to this day, my mother actually told me she heard a woman crying in the woods at like midnight one night. She walked to the edge of the woods and said, "Do you need help? I'll help you." And it stopped crying for a second and then just continued. And she said, "I'll help you. Do you need help?" And it just kept crying. And she said, "Well, if you can't answer me, you don't need my help." Because I had just told her about the Dogman and stuff in the area. And she's like, I wasn't taking no chances with that thing, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But we still, to this day, we get late at night, whenever I stay down there, we get stuff knocking on the windows, knocking on the doors, knocking on the walls. And I have 2 big pit bull German Shepherd mixes. And normally they're the kind of dogs that, like, if a dirt bike goes by, they try to tackle the guy off a dirt bike. You know, they're not scared, but they cower. It's like they know when it's, you know, when it's not a good thing to be tangling with. They hide in a corner. They don't even bark or anything. The one night, it was a couple years ago. Every winter, I take 2x4s and put them over our basement doors. We have double doors in the basement, and I put 2x4s, one high, one medium, one in the middle, and one low, and then I put tarps over it to try to keep the weather out and to keep the doors from banging because they move in the wind. Well, I used 3.5-inch deck screws to put them up with, and something 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I was upstairs. I had fell asleep in the chair in the living room, and I heard, it sounded like if you ever tried to drill a screw into wood without drilling a pilot hole, and it makes that real high pitched whining sound. It's what it sounded like in intermittent bursts, like like that. And I was wondering what it was. It was coming from the basement. So I grabbed my handgun and I went down into the basement, and it had already quit, but those screws were pushed out a good inch and a half, and the boards were cracking. So whatever it was, it wasn't a person, because I don't know too many people that are strong enough to break 3 2x4s on a padlocked door.
I mean, if you think about it, torque wise, that would have had to have been at least 800 to 1,000 pounds of pull on that thing just to get it loose.
You
with
know,
deck screws, if not more.
The thing that got me is it didn't even cut the tarp on the outside of the door.
Is that right?
It didn't leave a single mark on that door. So it must have used like the flat parts of its hands, and just leaned against the door trying to push it open.
Oh,
that's what I think it was doing. It was trying to test that door to see if it could get in, because it was only a month before that we had stuff getting thrown against the windows, and that tap 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 of a nail on the window, and it was in my mother's bedroom, and her room's only about 5 feet off the ground, and it was tapping the upper part of the window, which is about 8 foot. So I'm not surprised that it was trying to get in. You know, I don't know if there's a population of them or if there's just a handful, but it's like they have a vendetta against me. They know my scent. They followed me right to my house, even though I went 2 miles out of the way to get back home that time. They followed me. They scented me. They tracked me down like I had just walked straight home.
Well, your story is probably one of the most horrific ones I've heard anywhere, let alone Pennsylvania. I mean, that's just as wild. You know, I've had stories and encounters where even hunters would walk up with their, you know, they don't have any, but maybe a deer rifle or at the most, but maybe most of the time it's woodland, you know, upland game shot, and they will walk up to these things. Now, these things will stand their ground. They really will. I mean, they very rarely back away. And I don't know how tall this one was you saw, but I've had people tell me 9 to 10 foot. So it may very well be the same thing you saw. You know, have you heard of anybody else in your area that had any type of encounter, or people just keeping quiet about it?
I believe it was in 2004, a group of kids were on their bicycles on the same exact road where I had my second encounter. They were playing around riding their bikes in a little area, and they saw a 8-foot tall hairy man. They didn't know what they were, younger kids, like in their, you know, like 10 and 12 years old. And they just said that they had seen a hairy man, but he was huge, you know, like dwarfed them. My first encounter, I would put that Dogman at least 7.5 to 8 foot tall. Like I said, I was sitting down, so it did embellish the height a little bit to me because I wasn't standing up to kind of get that height to it.
Yeah.
But I would say at least 7.5, 8 foot tall, and probably about 450.
Did
The
you ever
second
see any
one,
eye color in your first one? I mean, on the one that stood up.
no,
Mm-hmm.
its eyes were red, but like I said, I had that red filter on,
Right.
so
Right.
I'm assuming that it was because of the filter.
Well, I tell you, I spent a lot of time on my aunt and uncle's farm, and I used to hunt a lot of hunting in there. And it,
Mm-hmm.
like you had, there was a lot of field and a lot of and the woods attached to it. Uh, I don't know how much I would do there anymore if after hearing a story like that because, I'll be honest with you. Ever since I started looking into all this stuff, I had my first encounter in '81 with
Right.
a Bigfoot, and quite frankly, I have had no intention of going in the woods, armed or otherwise, since then. Because there's just more stuff out there than people realize.
Oh, it scars you.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, um, like you could talk to my father because we used to go hunting together,
Mm-hmm.
frequently, and I never came out and told him this until recently about the Dogman encounters and stuff because I didn't even think this was something that people were seeing until I started doing my own research and finding out, wow, there's a lot of these things. But he could tell you, I'm sure he noticed a time where I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go, and then I kind of like, I'd rather stay home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, if I was that age and saw something like that, I would definitely be thinking twice about even going back out there, especially at nighttime. Out
Yeah,
there coyote hunting. I mean, God, just no way in hell I'd be doing that. So
yeah.
let me. I'm going to tell the chat, the folks in the chat, if you got a question, put it up on all cap letters, and we'll get it over to James if he doesn't mind answering questions.
Not at all.
I just find it being very remarkable. This phenomena of the upright canine in particular, though we've had the quadrupeds, uh, it's overall it's pretty similar to that. But the fact that you are attacked by, I wish I knew the reason for that. If why it would literally attack you like that.
I see. I have a theory about that. My personal opinion is there's obviously more than one of them in that area,
Okay.
and the second encounter was a juvenile because it could have only weighed 250 pounds for me to manhandle it.
Right.
I mean, and I didn't really manhandle it. I kind of just lucked out and fell on it. And
You got lucky.
yeah, exactly. And but it was only about 6 foot long, not counting, and it had a tail. It had an actual long, bushy tail on it.
Okay. Okay.
But not counting the tail, it was about 6 foot long.
Wow. Wow. We had a question by James G.
Yeah, you wanted to know
Did it
if
make
it
any
made
sound
any
of
noise.
screaming when you shot it?
It made one yip sound. It went
Mm.
yip like that whenever I hit it, and its
Mm-hmm.
ears dropped back, and then it took off running.
I imagine it was probably surprised anything shot at it. To be quite honest with you, that may have been the first time that ever happened, but who knows? Who knows? Angie James, could you salvage any of the blood?
No, at that time, like I said, I was 16, and I wasn't even thinking about it
Taking
being.
samples.
I didn't even realize what
Yeah.
had happened. Really, it was so. Like I said, I still have trouble wrapping my mind around it
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Well,
And
I tell you, some of the witnesses we get, even though the thing would attack it, it just stuns the hell out of you, and they're basically in shock, and I'm quite sure you're in shock.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah. What we got here? Okay. Do farm dogs ever hunt these creatures, or do dogmen ever hunt in packs? I don't know. I mean, I've never heard of anybody seeing a pack other than two of them, and these were quadrupeds, but they look. That's what the ones I call the dogman, the quadrupeds that have like the hyena back and very, very muscular with the wolf-like head. And I seen this person I had talked to saw two of them. But have you ever heard of anybody seeing any of these things in packs?
I personally haven't. I've read reports that they hunt in packs, but personal experience, I don't know. I'm assuming, like I said, because these were two different entities from my first encounter to my second encounter. They were two separate animals. You could tell they looked different. So, I mean, like I said, is there a breeding population there? Possibly. Do they have strong urges of vengeance? Possibly. You know, I mean, I know I'd be PO'd too if somebody shot my grandpappy, you know.
James, did the second one run away on two legs or on four legs?
It ran away on four.
Okay. Well, that could have either been a young one or you know, maybe just quadruped. It could have been just quadruped. You know, we run across with Bigfoot that, you know, people won't even see on two legs that they're on four legs. So you know, who knows?
Well, and who's to say that they don't start out life on all fours and they adapt as they get older to walk on two legs? Who knows? We don't know.
Does James think these were werewolves or dogmen?
I believe they were dogmen.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't buy into the werewolf thing. That's more, you know, that's more folklore than anything else. You know, a lot of people like to say first thing they want to tell you when I get a report is, "Oh, I saw a werewolf." You know, but yeah, I agree with you. Are there any really good close-up photos out there? You know, honestly, the only one I know of is the Seven Shoots beast from up Quebec. Some people believe that was a cryptid canine. My friend today told me she thought it was a Saba, which is possibly a form of Bigfoot. I don't know. You know, that thing is pretty intriguing because
isn't it carrying a dog or something?
Yeah, it's carrying a white dog. I mean, it's weird. And this is an area. Well, this is a provincial park up in Quebec, and whoever got the photograph, I mean, it was damn lucky to get it. I mean, I think they had a distance, but they had a telephotic lens on it. But it was a remarkable photograph. I think that's probably the best one I've ever seen. Now, I've got one, and I should have put it in here for the show, but one that got caught on trail cam up in northern Georgia. And yeah, you can tell that's a canine. It's big too. So who knows?
Well, see, that's one thing with my first encounter. I still debate with myself. I close my eyes and look in my mind's eye to try to see more detail. You know, and it had a sloped forehead, but it had a snout. So I've had people tell me it could have been a gugwe, even, you know, and they're typically the more aggressive type of dog man. So, I mean, that could be, I mean, it could have been sneaking up on me, but who knows? I mean, are they interdimensional or are they spiritual? Who knows? Are they extraterrestrial? I mean, it could have just popped into existence right in front of me, and I, you know, because I still have.
Yeah, you and I talked about that when we talked. I mean, who's to say it wasn't an interdimensional being and just popped right in front of you, and that's why you never heard or saw anything.
Right. That's what I have a hard time because I do have pretty good hearing, and I got a good sense of smell. I mean, that's from a lifetime of being in the woods. And to not hear something walking through snow and possibly breaking branches, rolling in gravel, and it to be 10 feet away.
Right.
That's what gets me, is it to be 10 feet away from me and me to not hear, see, or smell anything. The sight part I get, because it was pitch black. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like hand in front of your face, you couldn't count how many fingers you were holding up in front of your face. But the sound thing, the wind was whipping pretty good, but still you'd hear something. You just think you would hear something.
Yeah, that's a bit of a conundrum. I agree with you. You know, a lot of times when we get these cryptid sightings or reports, there's other phenomena associated with it. Did you see any type of lights or orbs or anything at any point?
Not with my encounters, no. I saw we had a question there about UFOs. I have seen 2 UFOs in the area though,
Mm-hmm.
at different times.
Right. Well, it's Pennsylvania. I mean, you expect that. I mean, you know, you expect to find anything in this state. It's crazy. Um, well, Josh asked how many years after the incident did it bother you? Well, it's still bothering you.
It still does, and it's been almost 20 years ago.
Mm.
That, like I said, that happened in 2002, and it's been, you know, this will be, next year will be 20 years, next 2 weeks before next Christmas. So I still get night terrors from it. I wake up in cold sweats. My girlfriend, she tells me, like, my God, how do you even sleep? Because you wake up screaming. You know, and the thing is, like, I don't even hear myself doing it because it's been happening so long now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll be screaming bloody murder, and she's punching me and kicking me, saying, "Wake up, you idiot! You're screaming. You know, I can't sleep." And I'm still asleep, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't even realize it. You know, but I'll tell you, some of the dreams I have, man, are vivid of it.
Well, that's another thing we get from experiences like this. It doesn't even have to be a dog man or even a Bigfoot or something. It's the after effect as far as in dreams and other parts of your life, and then all of a sudden something will pop up and remind you of it. And you know, I've talked to people who say they were driving down the road and saw something cross the road, a deer or something, and they had to stop because that's the first thing they thought about that experience they had years before that. And you know, I guess they kind of just flashed back to see it, and they had an anxiety attack or something because of it.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I'm on pretty heavy medications.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I'm able to talk about it. I've had people say before, like, "Well, you don't sound like it bothered you, or, you know, don't sound like it affected you." It's like, you don't realize how much medication is in my body right now to let me be calm enough to talk about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Well,
I
I can
mean,
understand that. And
you
like I
know,
said, I talked to a lot of people under a lot of situations, and you know, I got to give people credit for coming forward. I give you a lot of credit for coming forward because this is not an easy thing to talk about. And not only the fact that it was something that you experienced and it bothered you, but you're always going to get naysayers, and people are going to jump on and try to find some skeptical horseshit to put in with it. So, you know, I understand that completely.
yeah, the skeptics bandwagon.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I do get it.
yeah, I
It's,
mean, in all honesty, if I hadn't seen these things, I'd think I was full of shit.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
I bet. I bet. I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, when I had my encounter, I had an encounter with a Bigfoot, and I later had an encounter with a winged humanoid. And if somebody told me, you know, this is going to pop up in front of you, I just laughed at them.
Yeah,
You know, it's
it's
funny
not.
when a skeptic, you know, will talk all kinds of crap to you, and then something happens, and then they're a true believer. I've seen it happen many times.
Yeah.
Wow. Anybody got any more questions? Vincent, of course, said he thanks you for coming forward, brave enough to talk about this, and I do too. I mean, I really commend you for doing that. Yuri wants to know that you communicate via telepathy. You said you didn't think it did.
No, like I said, I just got like a vibe. I don't know how to describe it. I didn't hear anything in my head. Like
Right.
I've heard accounts of people saying that they actually heard literal words in their head. I didn't hear any words. I just got that sense of it looking at me, going like, "You bastard," like. I mean, that's just it. Like if you've ever seen your dog and they're sarcastic looking at you, that's what it was. Like
Yeah.
it was looking at me with like that sarcasm.
Wow. Blue Crosswords, was there a loss of ambient sound before, during, or after the encounter? That's a good question.
Well, prior to either of my encounters, I went hunting back in there dozens of times, and more than I can count, there were times where just all the sound went away, and then I heard something growling in the bush, and I would raise my gun at it, and it would run away. Or this particular encounter, like I said, the wind was blowing, so I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary until I physically saw it. But yeah, I do know that is a common thread, though. I have a feeling that if the wind wouldn't have been whipping around the way it was, I would have either heard it coming in on me, or I would have noticed the silence. But like I said, it was a pretty good storm that night. It was a blizzard.
Well, you know how it is, and I know how it's been because I've sat through snowstorms to deer hunt.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it lulls you to sleep sometimes. It just, kind of deadens you to a point. I guess it is hard to pick up things like that. But I can understand that. I really can. Do you think, this is from Vincent, do you think you have experienced more paranormal activity since this encounter, like with, spirit, ghosts,
definitely.
anything? Oh, really?
Definitely. I have some type of dark entity that lives in the house that I live in. I could get into that, but I actually I believe that I was possessed because I lost an hour and a half of time. I woke up to my dogs standing over me, licking me in the face, I think they were trying to bring me out of it. Well, while I was missing time, I had called my girlfriend unknowingly and told her that I was something older than the earth itself, and that there was nothing that could be done to get rid of me. And then I was going to proceed to kill our dogs and burn the house down and let James sit in the middle of the fire and burn up.
Wow.
Because whenever I came out of it, I was laying in a fetal position on the floor with the dogs standing over me. I had tears streaming down my cheeks. The dogs were licking me. And I was trying to figure out what happened. Because I was fine. And then because it was about 8 o'clock, and all of a sudden it was 9:30. And I called her and said, did I call you? Because I have call logs saying that I called you. And she said, yeah. And she was crying when she answered the phone. She was crying. She said, please don't hurt yourself or our dogs. Please don't burn the house. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And then she explained to me that I had said those things. And yeah, I have no idea what it is, but it's still there. My dogs see it. I've had experiences with shadow people in that house before. An 8.5 foot tall shadow person came through my kitchen door, walked in. I was laying on our couch asleep. It come walking through the door. It actually ducked to go under the header and come into the room and laid down on top of me, put its arms around me, wrapped its legs around my legs, and proceeded to drain my life force. That's what it felt like. I akin it to the lights going out. That's what it felt like my life light was going out. And I had sleep paralysis at that time.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw it coming into the room, I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything but just barely breathe. Whenever it got on top of me and I started feeling like I was dying, I managed to let out one yell, and I yelled my girlfriend's name, and she was sleeping in a chair across the room from me. And whenever she woke up, it turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared.
Wow. Do you think that there's any relationship between that phenomena and the upright canine, the Dogman?
Personally, I believe they're two separate occasions or two separate entities, because I saw it was so weird looking. It looked like a cephalopod. It had tentacles coming off of its head, and its arms were like it had several arms, but they were more like tentacles than arms. And it was up in the corner of my living room, perched in the corner, holding itself up in the corner. And I didn't notice it at first, but my one dog was looking at it, growling. And I was like, "What's wrong, buddy? What's going on?" And he started looking up the stairs and growling. And I looked over, and it's right there, plain as day. And it smiled at me. And it had just dagger teeth and red eyes. It smiled at me. My dog ran and jumped up on my couch and dove at it and went through it. And it disappeared.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting some of the manifestations people see of anything, it's but more times than not, people that do experience something as profound as what you experienced do have other types of paranormal activity. And, I don't know if it's because of that, they're more open to it or what the deal is, but it does happen a lot. Now, we did have somebody ask earlier if there's any instances where a hunter or someone is known to kill one of these things. Now, that Dark Walker account that I had talked about, which was not far from where you were, that thing was shot and killed. I mean, the witness I talked to, the young boy, said he definitely saw it laying in the back of the pickup. Now, he wasn't sure what it was. I don't know if it was a Bigfoot or some type of, canine, but I don't know. I mean, you've read the account. What do you think?
I think it was a Sasquatch,
right,
of a type.
Right.
Maybe not what we think of when we think of a Sasquatch, but it was definitely some form of a primate, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a legend. I don't even know if it's an old Shawnee legend or what the deal is in that part of the country, but of the Stone Man. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a Sasquatch or Bigfoot or what it was. I know that witness had brought it up that his grandfather had told him about the Stone Man. That's maybe what it was. I don't know. When it comes into indigenous lore, some of the representations they have of these things is it's different between them, but it's pretty well the same. They all knew something was there.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and like with the Stone Man too, some people believe that they wear armor.
Mm-hmm.
Some type, and some believe that it's just their hair is so matted thick with dirt and mud that it prevents arrows from penetrating it. So, I mean, that right there, that's two varying details.
Absolutely. It could be anything really, but I've heard all kinds of interpretations of the Stone Man legend. It's but I think it's an old Shawnee legend, but I'm not quite sure. James, this is from higher ground. Have you ever smelled sulfur, like a strong campfire match being struck nearby?
No, I mean, I have, but not during my encounters.
Right.
During the encounters, I didn't smell anything, but like I told you before, the wind was swirling around rapidly. So I mean, it could have been there and just been at my back the whole time.
Right.
Or blown across me. But no, I never smelled anything on either of my encounters other than that smell of death that come out of the one's mouth. Now I have smelled sulfur in those woods before. It smells like a burning match.
Mm-hmm.
Just going down when I was younger, just to go, make campgrounds or to hunt or just to get out in the woods. Um, I've had rocks thrown at me down in there, and I was working on digging a fire pit across the hillside. It was on the same hillside as I had my encounter. This was before I had the encounter uh, in 2002. I was working on digging a fire pit, and I got that real strong smell of a like a brimstone or a sulfur smell. But it only lasted for a few seconds, and then it was gone, and nothing ever came of it. Nothing ever confronted me or anything. So, but I do know the area occasionally does have that weird smell to it.
I'd be interested to find out that when the mine was working, was that shale they were mining there?
Well,
there had been anything similar, any type of sightings around during that time?
Yeah, I don't know. I know they did coal at the bottom. They did coal and shale, and then right now they just built a new facility back in there to what's the word am I using? To refine the waste,
Right.
the actual slate dump. They want to take that slate and burn it as fuel.
Oh, okay.
So they built a multi-million-dollar facility back in there to burn the shale or burn the slate. So I think if anything, if there's a population of dogmen back in there, I bet they're highly pissed.
Well, yeah, and you got to think about that. You figure that if when that mine first went in there, if it was kind of invading on their territory or whatever, and that these things just let out, I can see that. And I mean, you had encounters with what you thought may have been Bigfoot, and that's nothing unusual in Greene County, and it's pretty well known Bigfoot activity.
Mm-hmm.
So could have been that involved too, especially the stuff throwing stuff at you.
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was rocks about the size of a pebble to a golf ball. That's what was just getting pelted with it. Now the mines where I live, they're abandoned now.
Okay.
The ones that are down by the river itself, where they used to bring the coal and shale in to off of the barges, they used to load them there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I think there's 3 buildings down there. They're all abandoned. They have subfloors in them to where they have basements that sometimes fill with water. And in certain, like the shafts in the basements will fill with water. But I was actually talking to my dad not too long ago saying that, why couldn't something be living in those? That's a perfect habitat for a dog, man. There's food, there's water source, there's shelter, there's everything that they need to survive and still be undetected. Unless you physically go after them to find them, you're not going to see them.
Right.
If they don't want to be seen, they're not going to be seen.
Well, James, I want to thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate it. When you called me on the phone and told me your story, I knew I had to get you on the show, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Look, if something else comes up, please promise me you're going to come back.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Well, you have a good evening, good weekend. I will talk to you soon.
Hey, you too. Thank you.
Take care now. Now, if you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through the Phantoms and Monsters blog site. I want to again thank James West for joining me this evening. And thanks to each and all you for watching and chatting. If you made a super chat donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes this all possible. So please like, subscribe, and share. Now, next week, we got a big show coming because we'll be discussing the Chicago winged humanoids and the new sightings at O'Hare and Milwaukee. Tobias Whalen and Manuel Nared, who are team members on the Phantoms Monster 14 research team, will be joining me. And look, we got a lot to talk about because it has been nuts lately. We had this big encounter in July 22nd where there's been at least a dozen witnesses so far, plus TSA security and carrier supervisors and such. So, and it seems to be surrounding the cemetery, the Rest Haven Cemetery on the property down by the western side of the cargo area. So, yeah, join us next week. That's going to be a fantastic show. And we're probably going to have some more revelations to hand out to y'all. So don't miss that. So until next week, stay healthy and have a safe, enjoyable weekend. Thanks.